My name is Dan Golding. I'm an academic, a broadcaster and composer, and I created the music for Mars First Logistics.
Give it your best shot. Describe what this game is. It's such a gem. It's so unique.
Yeah.
What is this game?
You control a delivery buggy, I suppose, on Mars. And your job is to deliver objects, to courier objects, pick them up and take them to where they are supposed to be. But by doing so, you unlock more parts, you can redesign and change the rover, it probably is, the rover, Mars rover, with all sorts of outrageous things from clamps and little extendable arms that help you pick up things to rockets, treads instead of wheels, these sorts of things. It's like, I don't think anybody would bill it first as a comedy game, but there is so much comedy in the game. First thing I did for the game was make a trailer. And actually in this instance, unlike the previous projects, I actually cut the trailer together, the first trailer, and wrote some music that I thought worked for it.
Is there anything you can't?
Well, I used to do video essays, and yeah. So that's kind of where, but as is often the case with a game and with a trailer, you need some music. And my background being music, I'm like, well, I'm not going to figure out some royalty-free thing. I'm just going to write it myself because I know how this should sound. I was just struck by the idea of these little rovers dancing, because so much of the game is about their movement and this kind of failed movement. I kind of played around with a few ideas, but eventually I was just like, it has to fall into that 1980s synth pop world. My previous two games were Untitled Goose Game and then Frog Detective 3, which have very kind of thought through and clear, not just sound worlds, but implementation into the game. I think especially after doing those games, I was like, well, it's going to be another complicated implementation system. We'll have all sorts of audio states for the music and none of that. To the point where it is the simplest music system that I've ever worked with the game. That became such a gift for my writing process. And that meant for me that I got to do things that most game composers never get to do, or at least not so easily, which is write with form. Intros, interludes, outros, chorus, verse, bridge, modulation. Like being able to include those things without having to worry about the technical basis for any of them was, as I said, it's a gift. And it's been interesting as well, like watching people play the game and seeing where the music kicks in for them and kind of, I had this same thing with Untitled Goose Game as well, where it very is, again, this is such an academic way to think about it, but like that death of the author thing, right? Where you make a thing and you release it into the world, and the moment it's released into the world, it's not your thing anymore. And the same sort of thing is true for Mars First Logistics, where I've written the music and I know the system that makes it work in the game. But I don't know which track is going to kick in where when you finally built a rocket ship that can take off. And so watching streamers play it, and kind of, I remember seeing, I think it was Jeff Gerstmann was one of the early people who played the game when it just kind of come out in early access. And he had that exact moment where he built a rocket ship for the first time and it took off, and just the perfect kind of slightly more ambient track kicked in. I remember seeing him just sit back and sort of take in the moment. I was like, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.